Before I begin, I just want to take 5 minutes. And in these 5 minutes, I want to say that you're in the middle of a revolution centered here in Abuja, Nigeria. And I want to congratulate you on this revolution. It's called Digital Africa. The eyes of the world are on you. And I want you to clap for yourself for being here today. It's in the afternoon, it's Friday, and you're here to listen to the messages. And I also want to take some time for the organizers, the geniuses behind, the hard work and talent behind Digital Africa. If you can stand, so that the audience here can recognize your contributions. And the impact, stand, please stand. Thank you. Thank you for changing the world. Now it's interesting that Digital Africa has advisors. And some of these advisors are like Fritz Busamaka, who's the Secretary General of CIO Net, which represents 20,000 chief technical officers and chief information officers around the world. They support Digital Africa and the vision of Dr. Evans Waharam. There's Andy Chen and his remarkable background of success, again, serving on the advisory board, so supporting Digital Africa. Robin Raskin, something you may not know, by the way, that Robin Raskin made the careers of Bill Gates, made the careers of people like Steve Jobs, because she was the editor of the most popular publication in the US and became eventually the world. In fact, she even advised the White House. If it wasn't for her influence and her power and her anointment of Bill, Bill would not be where he is today, or Steve Jobs and forming Apple, or any of the other corporations that became giants in industry. And that's Robin Raskin, and she's an advisor supporting the vision of Dr. Evans here at Digital Africa. There's others too, like Elam Kay, a serial entrepreneur, a head of a conglomerate in the US at the age of 30. He is an advisor to Digital Africa because the vision of the world being upon you and the leadership that you're showing worldwide. So I want to point out that there is this tremendous support for what's happening here, and you are the center of a revolution, and myself, I bow to you. A shy conservative Canadian, I bow to you. So I want to take those few minutes out, and now I'll proceed with my presentation. Okay, so again, I want to thank you, and I want to welcome here, everybody here, for just taking the time to be here at Digital Africa. And so we're going to explore some key themes today. For 2016, there are over 100 billion venture capital investment in something called the digital quake. And I call it the digital quake, it's because it's about this innovation, compression, disruption, which is going to radically change the planet. And it's not going to be in 20 years' time or 30 or 50 years' time. It's going to be in 5 and 10 years' time. And you have a leader here, Dr. Evans Waharam, has had the vision to realize that it's going to impact your country, and he wants your country to take that leadership. And there's all this investment available because of this digital quake. This exponential change, this rapid page of innovation that will change the planet, where 80% or more of jobs and companies will change. In fact, the government of China has now invested $337 billion in startup funding for the digital quake because they're afraid of what's going to happen. That's why you have Digital Africa, because you want to stay abreast and leapfrog, as Robin mentioned in her talk. You are at the forefront because of that. And keep in mind, when I said that China invested $337 billion, in essence, their equivalent of Digital Africa, that's more than 80% of the GDP of the countries of the world. So it just shows you the significance of it. Now the thing is, this provides an opportunity or a challenge. The opportunity is that you gotta invest in startups, you gotta invest in things like Digital Africa, or you're gonna lose globally. It's simple as that. It's a simple equation today. And the investment community itself, and I'm part of the investment community, we can fund smart, that's specific and measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound African, Nigerian startups leading to sustainable global impact. And Nigerian and African startups can tap into this $100 billion in venture funding. And you can also join more than 170 unicorns. So you're asking, what's a unicorn? And it's already been mentioned here several times. These are companies worth over $1 billion. And in aggregate, worth over $500 billion. And there's about 170 of them now. And they're startups. Because you can start with 2 people in a garage, in a home, and because of this internet and the Internet of Things and so much more, or as the other guest just mentioned on portals, you can become dominate the world in many ways and very quickly. Now, it's necessary to understand and stay ahead of the impending digital quake, and because it's triggered by something called the 4th Industrial Revolution. There's a new wave hitting the planet. And this new wave is going to be faster and it's going to have more impact than the entire history of the world ever before. Things that used to take decades and centuries will now happen in just years. And it's called the 4th Industrial Revolution. So in the short term, the 4th Industrial Revolution is creating a global inflection point, a turning point for the world, for us as humans, for culture, economic, and society, and will impact every part of the planet today, more than ever before. So as a result, it's important for African entrepreneurs, for Nigerian entrepreneurs to understand these questions and to ask yourself these questions if you want to get funding. What is the 4th Industrial Revolution? What are the global trends and disruptions that will affect all of our lives in every possible way due to what I call the compression and the convergence in multiple areas all happening at the same time and in computing? And what about investment? What are the triggers to get investments? What are the attributes of successful entrepreneurs to get funding? Well, I'm going to tell you some of them today because all of you can, in fact, some of you are already entrepreneurs, but all of you, especially for your young person, you can become an entrepreneur. It's really simple to do. And then what about CEOs? What are they thinking? So I'm going to tell you about what a group of CEOs are thinking and the things that they're interested in. So those are the themes we're going to cover. So first of all, the 4th Industrial Revolution. Now, the 4th Industrial Revolution is a book by Professor Klaus Schwab, and he's the founder of a really famous forum called the World Economic Forum. And it's a subject of the white paper by UBS. Now, industrial revolutions are generally driven by automation connectivity, and the 4th Industrial Revolution is driven by extreme or hyper-automation connectivity. Change is happening so quickly and so fast that it's going to totally disrupt the world as we know it. And I'm telling you this because I just finished speaking in Geneva about this thing. And so the ITU is concerned. I just finished coming from Texas and Austin, sponsored by the National Science Foundation in the US, talking about this 4th Industrial Revolution, and they're concerned. And because it provides an opportunity, and that opportunity here in Nigeria is through Digital Africa. So there's going to be an amplification of changes occurring around the world due to this 4th Industrial Revolution, this connectedness, all of these changes that are happening at once. And all of this is due to ICT, to computing power. So you have examples of like gene sequencing, something that used to cost in 2008 over $100,000. Today, this year, it's under $1,000. Well, this is due to computing power and ICT. You have robotics, advanced robotics. You may have seen them on the videos online, like Jia out of China, or Google's Boston Dynamics walking robots. It's just amazing what's happening. Again, this is due to computing power and ICT, which supports AI and machine learning. So what is the 4th Industrial Revolution? Well, it can be organized into 3 areas, merging it into what we call cyber-physical systems, driven by artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics. So these 3 areas are the physical world, or the human world. The second is the digital, or technosphere. And the last is the biological, or the natural world. Now, from a paper from UBS, the impacts of the 4th Industrial Revolution will be economic, cultural, and social, and it's going to happen now. And it's going to result in endless disruption. And for examples of areas of impact, we have labor. For example, McKinsey is predicting today 58% of jobs, and I'm talking the US, can already be automated. So can you imagine here? Can be automated today. Or cybersecurity risks because of what's happening worldwide. Where Eurasia Cyber Group's cyber index of 1 to 100 has the US placed at 77 and China at 88. All of this because of the fourth industrial revolution. And the geopolitical impact, such as the global reaction to African populist movements, or global terrorist acts, or economic inequality, or even controversy around computing systems being sexist and racist today because of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, you can win in the fourth industrial revolution by being flexible, by being mobile, by being adaptable, by being here at Digital Africa, because it's all about being adaptable and flexible, in things like education, labor, infrastructure, legal IP, and by having a broad understanding of the innovations that are happening in every domain. You have to now keep up, or you're not going to win. And having a startup and entrepreneurship mentality. You've got to start thinking in those terms. So let's look at examples of the three clusters: the physical, the biological, and the digital. Of course, we have autonomous vehicles, such as drones and planes, boats, cars, trucks, and even spacecraft today. And we have 3D printing, but 3D printing goes beyond just objects. They now can do circuit boards and actual individual cells. They can do organs and medical implants and industrial parts. It's expanded way beyond what you used to think. And there's something called 4D printing. 4D printing is where you would add time to 3D printing so that you produce an object that later on will self-adapt and change, like a new piece of clothing that a person wears, or a medical implant that changes in real time later after the object is printed. And in fact, at CES, they already demonstrated some of this new technology. And of course, we have advanced robotics, which Robin talked about, that are adaptable and flexible and inspired by biomimicry and human-machine collaboration. And I want to emphasize this because, you know, last fall, I was invited to speak on Megatrends in Korea. And it just so happened that there was another keynote speaker hosted by the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning in Korea. And he mentioned that Korea is working on a hybrid Delphi system that combines humans and machines, and basically robots. And they have over 80% accuracy today of predicting trends. And as a result, the government has made a decision to change their economy to be algorithm-based, away from component manufacturing. And they've allocated 4.5% of their GDP to this program. That's bigger than any country in the world because of what the system has predicted. And that's because of embracing the visions of things like you're seeing at Digital Africa. And Korea is doing this because they're number one already, and they want to stay in this sort of capacity. There are also new materials such that are adaptable and smart, that self-heal, that are self-cleaning, and that have shape memory, new energy converters, and something called nanomaterials like graphene and special plastics and so on. And biological, you can do genetic testing and sequencing for traits and diseases today. There's synthetic biology, by the way. You can actually today create a designer human being, a plant, or an animal. In fact, in China, they're already doing it. They're creating these miniature pet pigs from scratch. They're designing it the way people want it. They can create muscular beagles with twice the muscle mass of regular dogs. But this technology is being applied to things like aging, blindness, all sorts of different kinds of diseases. In fact, they even possibly to resurrect a woolly mammoth. And there's just tremendous progress in this area of synthetic biology. And machine learning, of course, which you already talked about or you've heard about. There's even something called bioprinting. We're using 3D printing to produce tissues. And even neurotechnology, you know. There's an organization called DARPA, and they're already experimenting on brain implants, brain interfaces, mind control over objects. There's the European Union Brain Project, which is 1 billion euros, the US Brain Initiative, and you realize this idea that we have consciousness, they think that they're starting to understand even what consciousness is to a certain extent. And there's even new studies just released a few weeks ago saying that maybe bees have emotions. Can you imagine that? Or that they think that even insects now maybe exhibit some kinds of consciousness. Isn't that wild? You know, and it's because of this fourth industrial revolution. Okay, and then we have digital. Now, there's a lot of language here, like mobile is growing, sensor usage rising, the Internet of Things, planetary nervous system, the breakout of something called chatbots, virtual assistant intelligent agents, natural language processing, all equaling big data that is real-time, findable, shareable, executable, etc. It goes on and on and on. And it's happening now, today, disrupting the world in every possible way. There's the Internet of Things, which McKinsey is predicting by 2025 will be $11.1 trillion a year. So there's the Internet of Things producing a global digital mesh, a planetary nervous system, and you combine that with this idea of artificial intelligence and machine learning, it's producing a knowledge synthesis of everything out there. And I'm going to give you an example. There's this thing called Green Sense Farms using Internet of Things. They can harvest crops 26 times a year with 85% less energy, 1/10 the water, no pesticides and herbicides, lower CO2 output, and they create oxygen. So this reduces the 70% of water consumed by global agriculture and the 33% of food lost and wasted. Of course, we have smart sensors currently in the billions to more than 1 trillion by 2025, and smart devices. By the way, do you know that there's over 7 billion mobile subscriptions today? Over 7 billion today. Over 10 billion smart units. And there's a thing called a maker movement, where in your home you can create all sorts of things from pieces of computers that you can buy this year, which will drop under $5. There's also the sharing caring economy. You've heard of this, Uber and Airbnb, and what Facebook has done, and Amazon Mechanical Turk and others, which allows you in your garage, in your home, it doesn't matter where you are, to set up a business and transform the world, transform your city, transform the continent. Other digital examples include blockchain. Some of you may know this as Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is just one version of it. This ability to do all sorts of transactions in this thing called a public distributed ledger. Did you know that there's a consortium of 40 companies using something called Hyperledger, which is a version of this Bitcoin kind of technology? There's a consortium of banks now, over 40 of them using the same thing. Do you realize there's another group that's using this blockchain digital fingerprints to reduce the 1.77 trillion in the counterfeit marketplace? And even in 50% on online medications where there's no doctor names attached. And of course, we have the rise of digital assistant and chat bots. You're going to really see this year and next with Microsoft Cortana and Tay. Microsoft Tay, by the way, had to be shut down because it was doing wrong things for a while because it was being influenced by humans. And you have Amazon with their Amazon Echo and Alexa. These are computing systems that will talk on their own. Facebook M, Google Now, Google just announced Hello or Home and Allo. And the proliferation of machine learning tools that anybody can use. I'm talking the average person can start using these tools to do these things that you think are magical. Already there's been mention of augmented reality and virtual reality, of course. And watch on your radar screen, you're going to see this thing called Magic Leap with over $1.4 billion in investment this year. A HoloLens, which was demonstrated at something called TED. I don't know if you ever go online and watch those TED videos. They have this amazing teleportation demo that they did using something called HoloLens. And it's just amazing. I encourage you to go online and have a look. So UBS in their white paper is saying right away, artificial intelligence will disrupt these areas. And you can't read a lot of this because it's too small, but I'll just highlight some of them. Like exhibiting high productivity and high disruption from AI, artificial intelligence will be autos and IT services. And big data winners will use, automate, and secure big data. And there's going to be 44 zettabytes by 2020 of this thing called big data. And you think, how much is that? It's an unimaginable number. It's so big. But I can tell you it's 50 times bigger than it was in 2010. Or the analytics marketplace, this marketplace of analyzing what's in the big data, 75 billion by 2020 with mid-teen annual growth. And cybersecurity is 700 billion by 2020, growing from 500 billion in 2014. So that ends sort of my portion on trends and the fact that all the things that Evans has been leading, you've got to pay attention to it, because I'm telling you, around the world, there's a lot of research indicating that you have no choice anymore. Now, I spend a lot of time looking at investments, and in fact, in innovation in startups, and in fact, I've been tracking the attributes that make for success since the 1980s. And in fact, myself, I did an early exit when I was in my late teens, early 20s. Exit meaning I developed an innovation, there was some investment in it, and I had some shares in it, and I was able to sort of profit from it, though I gave it all away. So my family sort of taught me to try to sort of give back. But anyways, but I've been studying it for a long time. And so it's a keen area of interest of countries and governments and corporations. Here on the stage, you hear about innovation, about investments, how to do it, and so on. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to share some of my insights. So let's say you want to do a startup. Well, there's 3 startup thought leaders. Steve Blank with customer development, Eric Ries with Lean Startup, and Alexander Osterwalder, Business Model Canvas. And to go over their models will take an afternoon. I encourage you to just have a look online and just research some of the material they have, and they'll tell you all about how to do a startup, but in a really scientific way and having a much greater possibility of success. And if you're looking at funding, the crowdfunding marketplace is now 100 million. Crowdfunding meaning you go out to just regular people and they invest $5, $10, $100, $200. Maybe, it doesn't matter. That's crowdfunding. In fact, it's going to exceed venture capital probably this year, but for definitely next year. And all the different types of crowdfunding that you can use online. So that's an access that anybody can have. It doesn't matter which part of the world you're in. Now, since the 1980s, as I mentioned, I've been studying attributes that lead to entrepreneurial success. And in fact, in the last year, we did an extensive review of these attributes. And I'm going to share some of these insights from this review. So this is a study from Harvard Business Review, and what they did is they analyzed a whole bunch of really successful entrepreneurs, and they found that all of them had these 5 qualities. That's it, 5 qualities. And you know what the thing is? These qualities can be learned. They call it the innovator's DNA, and these qualities are: people always ask questions. Well, you can learn that if you don't ask questions. You can observe. You experiment. I mean, you try things all the time. Associate, meaning you connect the dots. You're always linking up different ideas together and thinking about it. And networking. Networking is what you're doing here today. Networking is sitting at your table and saying, hey, I'm Fred, and who are you? And tell me more about your life and your kids and the things that interest you. Those 5 things are one of the greatest predictors of success as an entrepreneur. Nothing magical here. Other research indicates, and it's somewhat the same thing, the number 1 predictor of 50% of career success is open networks. And open networks are links to diverse people. So people who have open networks are better forecasters and first movers and connectors and have more disruptive innovations. When I mean diverse, if you see somebody different, talk to them. The more diverse the network is, the better it is for you. Now I'm going to go over some charts on venture capital funding. And there's a lot of data in here, so we're just going to do a bit of an overview. And we'll have all copies of the slides so you can drill into it. So this chart contains the quarterly financing trends in venture capital-backed companies from 2011 to 16, and these are global trends. And you can see that venture capital funding increased from $50 billion in 2011 to $130 billion last year. So the money available is growing, and the money available for you here in Nigeria and in Abuja is growing because investors will now invest globally because of the fourth industrial revolution. And even the number of deals have grown by about 49%, from 5,600 to over 8,300. Now here's the quarterly deal share by sector. So what are the areas, and there's a whole bunch of areas that people will invest in, agriculture, marine life, and so on, but these are the top 5 areas. So the top 5 areas are internet at 50%, mobile at 17%, healthcare at 13%, software, that is non-internet and non-mobile, at 4%, and consumer products and services at 3%. So if you're thinking entrepreneur, and if you can fit into one of those buckets, it's going to be a little bit easier to get venture funding. Corporations, almost every major corporation now has their own investment fund. And they're looking for entrepreneurs from around the world. And I'm literally everywhere in the world, they want to look for young people, old people, medium-aged people, doesn't matter. If you've got an idea and you try to do something with it, they want to see it. And in fact, venture funding from corporations has gone from 22% to 27% from 2015 to 2016. And I'll give you one example. Lenovo, just a few weeks ago, announced a $500 million startup investment fund. Well, they'll invest in things like cloud computing, big data, artificial intelligence, basically anything that's in that fourth industrial revolution, they're interested in. And that's why you've got to pay attention to it. Okay, now I'm going to talk about investment triggers. So you're an entrepreneur, you want to get investment. Is there some kind of rules or formulas that'll increase your chances? Well, there are. This is called the investment readiness level. It was originally formulated by Steve Blank, and this is a version by John Salop, who's an angel investor, and I've even modified even a little bit further. Now there's 9 levels here, and the more you achieve, the greater the probability you're going to get investment, and you're going to succeed in your startup. And you should implement the steps somewhat in this order, and you shouldn't skip steps. So you notice the first step is something called an initial pass of a business model canvas, a fancy word, but really it's just a business planning tool. And if you go online, there's a lot of data how to do this. Level 2 is estimating market size and who your competitors are. Level 3 is making sure you have some kind of problem and you got a solution, and you actually checked with people to make sure that it is a real problem and a solution. Level 4 is you created something called an MVP, a minimum viable product, which is a fancy word for a prototype. You've created something tangible. At this point, maybe you may get some angel funding. Maybe, $50,000, $75,000, something like that. Level 5 is product market fit validation. That means you actually created a product, you were able to maybe get somebody to buy it, so you got some proof that there is some need, and you've got something that does sell. And at this point, you're, again, much able to get sort of early stage funding. Level 6 is revenue model validation. Definitely you've got paying customers, you've got revenue exceeds costs, you've got a proven, what we call a proven revenue model, again, a much better ability to get funding. At this point, especially in the investments we make, you may even get $500,000 at this point. Level 7 is creating a better product, improving on your product and service. Level 8 is unique value delivery. You got something that's really unique over your competitors, and people are willing to pay for it at a profit, and it will scale. Scale means you can grow with it. It will grow. And at this point, you may even get $1 million. And then level 9 is you got validation that everything you're doing is right, and you got rapid growth, you got customers, they will stick with you, you can retain them, and so on. So it's kind of like a formula. You follow this formula, you got a much greater chance of success. So here's a compilation of success attributes, and again, there's nothing magical here. Successful entrepreneurs are creative and innovative, and by the way, we can measure this now. We can determine if you're creative and innovative. And remember, you can learn this, you can learn these skills. Determined, high self-control, persistent, independent, a risk taker, confident, listens intently, focused on measurable business gains, thirsty for knowledge, high social abilities. High social abilities means you have high self-awareness, you regulate yourself, you can keep yourself under control, you're really motivated, You have a lot of empathy and you have social skills. That's what we mean by high social abilities. And we can measure this, by the way, and you can learn it if you try. Okay, so what are the reasons that startups fail and some additional attributes for success? So these are the top 20 reasons startups fail, and this comes from CB Insights. And in my opinion, CB Insights is the best analytics company out there in terms of investments. So they've analyzed over 150 companies, and they made a list, and in fact, it's free. It's a free study. If you get my slides and you notice the link is underlined, you can click on it. You'll go to the free list. I'll just highlight the top 7, and there's nothing magical here. They found that startups fail if there's no market need, ran out of cash, not the right team, got out-competed, pricing cost issues, poor product, lack of business model, things like that. And then how about startup success attributes for startup companies and teams? Well, female co-founder, technical business co-founders or balanced team, repeat founders, experience with other companies. They avoid something called premature scaling. I'll describe what that is soon. They have good mentors. Mentors would be maybe people like other entrepreneurs who will guide you. You track metrics. You keep track everything that how your business is doing. And you have experience in pivoting. Pivoting means that you're going to change your business probably once, twice more. And that's just normal for a startup. You're going to make some changes because you're not getting enough adoption. So premature scaling is about raising too much money too early. Did you realize that? If you raise too much money too early, sometimes it's not a good thing for you because you get sloppy. Hiring too many people, having too much hierarchy, that's all unnecessary. You should always stay lean, right? Skipping steps in the investment readiness level, those 9 steps, skipping steps. Scaling too early, growing too fast when you're not ready, right? Okay, so now I'm going to share with you some insights from this group called the Financial Services Roundtable and from a conference they're holding called the FinTech Idea Festival. So the Financial Services Roundtable consists of 100 of the 100 top 50 CEOs in the US in financial services. And they actually asked me if I can help them in this planning of the special summit they have next year. So I'm actually chairman of their advisory council on technology. So next year in San Francisco, we're going to invite the top 150 CEOs around the world and plus experts. And we're going to talk about the 4th Industrial Revolution. We're going to talk about everything you've been talking about Digital Africa. That's how important it is. And just to show you how powerful this industry is, this financial services industry is $14 trillion worldwide, 15% of the global output. And this group of 100 CEOs, they represent 92.7 trillion US dollars in managed assets, 1.2 trillion in revenue, and they employ 2.3 million people. And we're going to look at the future, all the things that Evans has been doing for you for the last few years. That's why I'm saying that you are at the center of a revolution here in Nigeria. So what are we looking at? The future of financial technology. Well, and it's all the things that have been talked about these last few days here at this conference. We're going to look at financial inclusion. Financial inclusion meaning more and more people having access to online. And what does that mean for the world? A big data in the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence. Well, guess what? All of that's been talked about here. That's part of the 4th Industrial Revolution. Biometrics and biotechnology, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, cybersecurity, and the future of the fintech workforce. All of the things that have been talked about here at this conference. That's why Digital Africa is so important to you. And that's why it's important to us, and that's why we're here. Because we think that there's so much leadership being shown here in Abuja, Nigeria. So, I'm going to summarize by saying that I started with a bunch of questions, right? And these questions were, what is the 4th Industrial Revolution? Why should you care about these global disruptions and the changes that are happening? What is it all about? So you should continually ask those questions to yourself. And then from an investment standpoint, if you're interested in doing a startup, what is the investment landscape? What are the triggers and attributes that make for entrepreneurs to be successful and to get investment? And then what are some of the top CEOs? What are the things they're thinking about? and what's important to them. And it just so happens it's everything you've been discussing the last 3 days here at Digital Africa. And that's why I applaud you for that vision that you're showing by being here today, and also by your organizers for the vision that they're showing. So I'm humbled by all the leadership, and I thank you for allowing me to present here today. And I actually do discussions with a lot of experts, and I finance my own team to do it, and it appears worldwide. Anyways, in the slide there's a link with discussions with over 1,000 experts around the world, and it's all free, right? So.